Welcome back, everyone. This lesson is going to be on changes in demand. In the first lesson, we covered what demand is, and especially what can change quantity demanded. If you recall, that was the price. But in this lesson, we're going to be going over what can actually make a change in demand altogether. It means changing how much people want to buy at every price that may prevail in the market. So to just look back at what we covered before, you guys should have a good understanding of what demand is and the law of demand. Remember, a change in quantity demanded is done by price. Remember, the quantity that people demand is only affected by the price. So it moves us up and down this curve. But the curve itself doesn't change because the curve is demand. Remember, demand is the amount of goods people will buy for every price that may prevail in the market. So here's every price we may have in our market, and here's each quantity for each price. That makes the demand curve, this big blue line. Now, what we're covering today is what causes a change in demand. Well, a change in demand is when demand changes at every price. A few different ways to put it and to answer this is a change in demand is when consumers buy more or less of a good at the same price. Another way you could put it is when people will buy more or less of a good at every price. What you can see here is I have a graph with my quantity and my price right here. And we have our demand curve called D1. Now, at a price of $2, normally people would buy Q1. Let's make that 10 in this example. But if something were to happen to the market, which could be any of the things that we have down at the bottom of this page, where we have our kind of 6 items right here, what that could do is that could move the entire demand curve to what you see here at D2. So at the same price, at $2, we would go from Q1, which we said was 10, and it would increase it to Q2, which could be like 15. That means at the same price, people would have bought 10, but something else changed in the market, and now they're buying 15. So that's what it means to increase demand. Demand can also decrease, and then at the same price, people would buy less. But the other thing to keep in mind is if demand is to change, it could increase, and you would have our first D1 and D2, and that means at $5, people were buying 50, but now they're buying, let's say that would be 75. At $8, they were buying 20, and now they're buying, let's say 40, and at $2, they were buying 80, and now they'd be buying like 100. What that means is that at every single price, people are demanding more. So what that means is there's 2 ways we can go ahead and define what a change in demand is. One is it's when consumers buy more or less of a good at the same price. We said at $2 they'll buy more. Or you can say when the consumers will buy more or less of a good at every price. So you can put kind of any option you want right there for this option. What makes this part easier then is the next part says, in other words, this means consumers will buy more or less of a good at, and there's 2 answers you can put there. It could be they could buy more or less at the same price, or they might want to buy more or less of a good at every price. Now, remember, what causes a change in demand? Well, something that causes a change in demand is an external factor. It is definitely not price, because we know price is what causes a change in quantity demanded. Some external factor is required for a change in demand. That's a big difference between the two. Price only changes quantity demanded, where a change in demand is created by an external factor, which is what we'll cover next. So go ahead for this box right here is go ahead and fill in your own words, what is the difference between change in quantity demanded and a change in demand? They're different things, and those words are specifically used in economics to mean something else. Remember, price changes quantity demanded, but an external factor will cause a change in demand. All right, now there are 6 things that could cause demand to change. So we're going to cover those as we go through right here. Now, What we're looking at here is the first one here is the number of consumers. So the number of consumers essentially means this. If I had a population like our classroom and I was trying to sell something like Kit Kat bars, if I only had 25 in the kids in the classroom, at any price, only a certain number of those Kit Kats would be bought. But if I brought another group into the room and I doubled the class to now 50 students, that would increase the amount people demand. So it would look something like, here's what it would look like with just the 25 kids in the class. But if I doubled the amount of students in class, demand would increase. On the other hand, if I kicked out those other kids and I only had 15 kids left, demand would decrease, which you could see that now at $5, people are only buying 20 goods where they were buying 50. And at $2, people are now buying 50 goods when they were only buying 20 before. So that's how a change in the number of consumers could increase or decrease demand. It means that as the number of consumers increase, demand for the good will increase. If the number of consumers decrease, demand will decrease. All right. The next box we have here is consumer income. Remember, income is the amount of incoming money you have. So it's how much money you have. That means if income increases or decreases, demand will change as well. So let's go ahead and explain what that means. There's two types of goods you need to have for consumer income. So you're going to have a part here about normal goods, which is the most popular type, and then inferior goods, which I'll get to later. How consumer income works is this. It means that if people's income increases, as in they get richer, they have more money. And what do richer people do? They buy more stuff at the same price or every price. So demand would increase. On the other hand, with a normal good, if consumer income decreases, as in there's a recession or people are just poor all around, demand would decrease and people would buy less of a good at the same price or at every price. So that's how consumer income works on normal goods. However, there's another type of good you need to know about, which would be inferior goods. Okay? Inferior goods are a special type of good that work the opposite of a normal good. And remember, it's called inferior good not because it's a lower quality. It's called an inferior good because of how it responds to consumer income. Now, you might be racking your brain going, wait, as people get poor, they buy more of something, but if they get richer, they'll buy less. That's a really weird thing. And it is weird, but it does happen. And the best example I can give you is, well, like ramen noodles, like Top Ramen in those packages. Think about it. If you're poor, and you can think of yourself maybe next year in college or just starting out, you are probably going to have a very low income. So how many packets of ramen noodle are you going to buy? Probably a lot. So as your income's low, your demand has increased for ramen noodles. But as years go by and you get better jobs and more income, you might still buy some ramen noodles, but you'll probably buy a whole lot less Top Ramen as your income increases. So what that inferior goods is, they just respond opposite. We found out in the last recession that McDonald's and Walmart are also inferior goods. Remember, this doesn't have anything to do with quality. It just means as people got poorer, they go to McDonald's more and less to fancier restaurants. And as they got richer years later, they went to McDonald's less and spent more of their money in fancier normal restaurants. So that's how consumer income works. It has inferior and normal goods, which means if you get richer, you buy more, and poorer, you buy less, but also inferior goods, which has that kind of reverse pairing. All right, the next type of goods we have is substitutes and complements. And we're first going to focus on what a substitute is. So substitutes are one good that you can buy one instead of the other. So a really good example of these two things is butter and margarine. Now, I get to explain to you guys what butter and margarine is. Remember, butter is made from the fat that comes from milk from cows. Now they take it, they remove it from the milk in a way, and then they go ahead and process it a little bit and churn it, and you get kind of that thick spread. Margarine, on the other hand, is not from animal fats, it's from plant fats and vegetable oil. Now, you might be going, I don't have margarine, I have butter. But remember, a lot of people don't even know what they have in their fridge. If you have Country Crock, if you have um, a Smart Balance, those are all margarine. Even better, if you have, I can't believe it's not butter, well, it's really obvious which one you have in your fridge because you probably can't believe it's not butter. That's because it's margarine. So substitutes of butter and margarine are very, very interchangeable, even though they're very different goods. So think about if you're at the store and you see those two substitutes, butter and margarine. And if you want something else, you can think of like Xbox and PlayStation. Those are also very good substitutes. Usually buy one, and if you don't buy one, you will buy the other instead. But let's go back to butter and margarine. If you're looking at the store and we're looking at margarine, so here's margarine set at its price, and you see butter over here. Remember, we're in the market for margarine, and that's what we're going to focus on. So in the market for margarine, if butter increases in price, what will happen to demand for margarine? The answer to that is demand for margarine will increase. Think, if you go to the store and you're looking at butter and margarine and butter's more expensive, you'll buy more margarine regardless, even if margarine doesn't change in price, because butter's more expensive, because that would be the other option. Now, on the other hand, if butter decreases in price, remember, we're still in the market for margarine here. If butter's cheaper, demand for margarine would decrease. That means that if butter's cheaper, you're going to buy more butter, and even if margarine doesn't change and keeps the same price, you'll buy less of it. So that's how substitutes work, and they can work for Xbox and controllers or anything else, and even types of sodas. You might be looking at a can of Coke or a Mountain Dew, and those are substitutes. So if one went up in price, you probably would demand more of the other good. So that's what a substitute is. Now, this product would not be affected by something that either had no substitutes or some two goods that are complements. So a product that would not be affected by this would be complements, which brings us right over to here. So what is a complement? Well, a complement is any good that you usually buy with another good. You can think of things like hot dogs and hot dog buns, or peanut butter and jelly, things that you typically buy together. And a really good one we can go back to is if you think of Xboxes or PlayStations, if you buy an Xbox, there's many, many other complements that you'll buy with it as well, as in controllers and games and subscriptions and all those other ways that if you buy one of those, you'll buy many of other things that complement it. Remember, this is complements with an E, not complement with an I, which is like, you look very nice today, and like, good job on your assignments and getting them done. So it's spelt differently, so make sure you just kind of remember that. So complements are typically goods bought together. So you can think of it sort of this way. If you're thinking of hot dogs and hot dog buns, let's go ahead and think of it this way. Let's say we're focusing on the market of hot dog buns, okay? What this means is we're caring about the demand for hot dog buns. Now, if the price of hot dogs increases, what would happen to demand for hot dog buns? The answer to that is demand for hot dog buns would decrease. And to explain it is, if hot dogs are more expensive, you'll buy less hot dogs. And if you buy less hot dogs, you'll buy less buns. Now, the opposite would be true as well. So if hot dogs were cheaper, you might see a big sale on hot dogs and buy more hot dogs. Therefore, demand for hot dog buns would increase. So if hot dogs get cheaper, demand for hot dog buns, a complement, would increase. So what are some examples of complementary products? Well, I gave you a whole bunch of examples. You should be able to figure that out right now. All right, we now move on to our last two, consumer taste and advertising. Consumer taste and advertising is probably the most popular example of something that will change demand. Consumer taste is what consumers want to buy. Now, it doesn't require advertising to increase consumer taste. You can think of what's going on right now with toilet paper. Demand has increased for toilet paper because, well, people just think toilet paper is important and they're buying more of it. There's not really like a good reason, just the taste for it, as in people want more of it. Another example is fads and trends. You can think of things like silly bands. I'm sure you guys aren't too young to forget about those, that you might have been in elementary school, and for no advertising campaign whatsoever, people just started buying lots of silly bands. People were taking these 99-cent packages of silly bands and paying $5, $10, $20 for one rubber band in the shape of a flamingo or a race car. Why were they doing it? The answer is consumer tastes simply changed. People thought it was great. And just as quickly as it arrived and people said, I need silly bands, it disappeared and people just stopped buying them. So consumer taste can just be a thing that changes. It didn't change the price. The price of silly bands didn't affect this. It was just consumers' taste change. Another thing that can happen is advertising can come in. You see commercials saying buy this good or buy that good. And when you advertise more, people buy more of that good. Now, on the flip side, you can also have disadvertising. For example, those truth commercials, those anti-tobacco campaigns where they show you like tobacco will cause cancer and other diseases. And that causes demand to decrease. So remember, consumer taste in advertising, if consumer taste changes, so there's a lot of advertising, positive advertising for a good, demand will increase. And at the same price, people will buy more of a good. Disadvertising campaigns or negative ones can cause demand to decrease and shift the other direction. Therefore, at the same price or at every price, people will be buying less of a good. All right, so that is essentially consumer taste in advertising. And our last box right here is demographics of consumers. What demographics are is it's a type of person. So not just the number of people, but the type of a person. What this means is you could kind of go ahead and think of certain regions. I like to think of Seminole Heights. Seminole Heights used to be kind of more of a poor neighborhood. But then a lot of young millennials moved there and a lot of hipsters moved in there. And what do hipsters like? They like fancy restaurants that have aioli on everything and craft breweries. And so demand for certain goods like craft brewed beer increased and people demanded a lot more of it. And that's why if you go to Seminole Heights, you'll see a lot of those places. Other places like Sun City, a lot of old people moved in there. And you saw a lot more like buffet restaurants show up because demand for certain goods increased. So when types of people, being different ethnicities, will demand more or less of certain goods, different age groups will buy more or less of goods, or even people with different income levels, that could be a demographic change. So it means that if demographics of an area of a market change, people demand more or less of a good based off that demographics demand. So that's your last one right here. Now, I hope this was helpful for you guys. And I hope you understand what can change demand. Remember, these are things that are external factors. It's not price. Price changes quantity demanded, where those 6 other options will affect the demand curve as a whole. I hope you guys understood this, and I hope you're all doing well. Part 3, the other part with demand elasticity, should be coming soon. Take care and have a great day.